Hey, I'm Paul Butler. I'm one of the client partners at New Leaf Training and Development, and I'm joined today by Brian Bailey, who is the VP Community College Sales at the recently merged Emsi Burning Glass. Hey, Brian, for the last 15 years at New Leaf, we've really focused on three core purposes of helping people and organizations better manage themselves, lead others, and grow business acumen. And I just wondered what would be your recommended best practices in those three areas. But please start though, Brian, by telling us a little bit more about your organization, what you do specifically, and who you serve. And over to you, Brian, and I'll wrap it up when you're done.
All right. Thank you, Paul, for introduction. Thank you for reaching out as well. I've had the privilege of knowing Paul for going on a decade now. Appreciate the work that he and his team have done. And yeah, so I work with Emsi Burning Glass, recently merged. I've been with the organization for going on 8 years. We've been around serving community colleges and higher education institutions for over 21 years now. And so my specific role here is the Vice President of Community College Sales. And so I'm engaged with all the colleges across North America, and my team is, I run a team of about seven direct reports. And in that, we're servicing, I think the genesis of what we do is helping decision makers in higher education be able to be informed. We hear this term data informed, and so we spend a lot of time around delivering value and making the connection between educators, the students that are being educated, and as well as employers. So we have grown. This merger has been a real genesis of growth for us, I think, and so we're excited about that, and I'm excited to talk to you today. So I think going back to your question, you talked about managing yourself, leading others, and then also growing business acumen. And for me, there's that managing yourself equation has even changed since COVID, right? Because we went from being a sales organization that all reports to a HQ to being a sales organization that's run 100% remotely. And then we're working with colleges and universities who are in that same boat. And so I think it's been ever increasingly important to develop practical skills to harness tools that exist to better manage yourself. And one of the issues that I even face, and I think something that you've been addressing with your work, is I find myself going from Zoom to Zoom to Zoom. And there's almost become this weird grace period of, everyone just expects you to be a tiny bit late to a Zoom call because you're smack dab next to another thing. I think it's been increasingly necessary. And one of my recommendations is that you're always, in your engagement as you're managing yourself, you're giving yourself some grace, but then you're always giving others grace as well, and clarifying expectations. And so I think it's so utterly important in today's economy that, we work in data, right? So we're delivering data that helps people make a better decision. Well, before you're making a decision for other people or for the organization, you're making those one-on-one decisions for yourself, moment to moment. And so I think it's going to be important. And one of the things that I've gained over the years of experience that I've had is part of managing yourself is making sure that your activity and the things you need to do day to day, week to week are tied to your strategy. Right? And so if you can create a situation where strategy is informing your tactics, that's my little go-to speech, is you're creating value because you're not incongruent in the things that you're doing. And I think part of the reason that we struggle with managing ourselves is potentially incongruency. So that's one of my recommendations there is become congruent so that your tactics are matching your strategy. As far as leading other people, it's helping them to do that same thing, right? And so I think when it comes to leading other people, an important aspect of it is defining the expectations for them. And when you're leading other people, I would caution people to err on the side of over communicating rather than limiting communication. And now that we're in the Zoom world and everyone's involved in e-commerce to some degree, we don't have to go to Walmart. We can buy from Amazon and have everything delivered to our door. There's this concept of, I think you actually have to communicate more. and the quality of your communication needs to always be checked, right? And so I think one of the things I've learned, and of course, business leaders across any industry, is realizing that your intention behind what you're saying is always not what's received. And Paul, I remember when we first met, one of the things that impressed me about your work and just even how we interacted was you always came back and you said, well, Brian, let me confirm that I've heard what you've said. And I think that's more important than it's ever been, because we can become lazy through the technology, right? The technology assists us, but if we're not intentional about communicating expectations, really driving high levels of communication, and then delivering on those things, and sometimes they're not going to meet where we need to be, and so it's important that we lead others in that way. And then last, growing your business acumen. And what I've realized is, especially with the tech, we use a pretty large tech stack to get the work done that we do. And I would encourage folks to step back and you look generationally, right? You go back all the way, to the World War II generation, and then come forward in the millennials and the Gen Xers and Zers and whatever letter of the alphabet the next generation is going to be. It's this idea that we're still human beings, and growing business acumen, I think, is much about the tools and the resources available as it is in continuing to develop the human capacity to be a person, right? And communication is and leadership are some of the most sought after skills in job postings that we see. But what does that actually mean? That means that as a business owner, as somebody that's an employee, or as a director of a department, the key to growing that business acumen is, number one, recognizing that there are resources out in the market. And number two, then how are you going to assemble those resources and then build them out into habits, right? And I think that's one of the things that I love about New Leaf is it's all about driving, good business practice, but then doing it to a point to where it becomes a habit, and then you can free up bandwidth. So those are some of the recommendations that I would have, Paul, for your listeners that are joining us today.
Well, Brian, on behalf of everyone who watches these, and as you know, they become very popular, both on our social media and also the weekly newsletter that we do. Thanks so much for your insights to help people and organizations better manage themselves, lead others, and grow business acumen. It's really great to catch up with you personally as well, Brian. Brian, could I offer you a virtual high five?
Yes, sir. All right. Done.
It's great to see you, Brian.
Good to see you as well, Paul. Cheers.